What's going on, everybody? I'm Patrick Chapla, founder of POWLAX and creator of POWLAX Master Coach. And in this video, we're going to be showing you an amazing one-on-one drill that focuses in exclusively on what offensive and defensive players should do when the offensive player gets to a dangerous spot on the field. And it's called island one-on-ones. So like the name says, we're going to be doing one-on-ones where the offensive player actually gets to start at the island. And this is going to do a ton of cool stuff. First, it's going to give our defensive players an idea of what type of position that they want to get into to have the most body control and be able to push the offensive player wherever they want to get. And on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to give our offensive players a bunch of great practice doing rockers, question marks, and any other types of dodges that they would use while inside once they actually get to the island, rather than trying to work on everything from dodging from the outside, getting into the island, and then doing these dodges. In this video, we're going to go over how to set up and run island one-on-ones, talk about some of the offensive and defensive teaching points that we want to cover with our players, and then watch some live video and talk about exactly what we would coach the players that are in the videos. We're going to cover how to set up this drill in two distinct ways. The first is for attack and defense, and the second is for the offensive and defensive midfielders. To set up island one-on-ones for attackmen, set up a line of defensemen and a line of attackmen 5 to 7 yards up and 15 yards out from either pipe. The first attackman and defenseman will move to the island and engage each other by getting low and pushing against one another. The attackman will be facing the midline and the defenseman will be facing the attackman. The defenseman's positioning may change depending on whether you want to teach defensemen to push to the corner and X or drive to the wing and upfield. Either way, we want to put the defenseman in his perfect engaged position for the drill. This will give him a reference as to where he wants to position himself on dodges that start from the outside. For the midfield setup, we're going to put lines 10 yards above GLE and 15 yards out to each side. The first two midfielders will enter the drill by moving to the midfield island, which is 5 yards out and 10 yards up from the near side pipe. The offensive midfielder will be facing the end line as if he was in the middle of an alley dodge. The defensive midfielder's position will once again be based on your defensive strategy, but for the most part, this will mean that he will be on the offensive midfielder's inside back shoulder with his feet running with the offensive player, but his shoulders pointed towards the back corner of the field. To begin each rep of the drill, players will start engaged by getting low and in an athletic position. On the coach's whistle, the 1v1 starts, and it works like a traditional 1v1. The offensive player is trying to score, and the defensive player is doing his best to prevent him from scoring. Each rep will last 2 to 4 seconds depending on what type of offensive dodge techniques you are working on. After each rep, 2 new players will enter the drill. Now we're going to talk about exactly what we want to see from the offensive and defensive players. Defensively, the first thing we need to talk about is body position, footwork, and stick placement. Our defensive players need to be balanced and in a low athletic position. If we've allowed the offensive player to get into this position, we have not done a good job with our initial approach, engaging the player and taking a good angle after trying to bump or drive that player. So we must win the physical battle. Defensive players should have their feet a little more than shoulder width apart and be able to move left and right while driving the offensive player out. Their hands should be extended with their fists and stick on the hips of the attacking player. Second, we need to know which hold we will be using. We only have short sticks in our example, so we're going to be seeing cross checks, but if you have poles running the drills, you may want to have them in V holes to keep their sticks in an upfield position or keep their sticks on the hands of the offensive player. Our teaching points on the defensive end are going to revolve around driving offensive players to a location where they have less angle to get a good shot off. Defensemen will need to use their footwork to remain in a good position and drive offensive players to the sideline or to X. As the offensive players use their dodges, we'd like to knock him off balance. It's extremely important that we teach all of our defensive players not to go for any stick checks while inside the hub because it leaves us more vulnerable to get beat. We'd rather focus on good footwork and driving the offensive players out rather than trying to go for stick checks. A good way to prevent your poles from going for stick checks within this drill is to have all of your players use short sticks. That way they will not be able to use the length of a pole to try and make stupid stick checks. Finally, as the offensive player goes to shoot or pass from this position, we want to do our best to get our stick in his hands by lifting his bottom hand or simply putting the head of our stick in his chest. Offensively, we also want to start with stick placement, footwork, and body position when starting. First, the stick needs to be away from the defenseman. Whether offensive players go two-handed or one-handed, they should position their sticks away from the defensive player and use their body to protect the stick. Second is footwork. Offensive players should start in a balanced and athletic position with their outside foot back a little bit, preparing to push forward into the defenseman. Teaching offensive players to be physical here is paramount to being a good offensive player. If we don't bring the physicality to the defenseman, they are going to bring it to us. Our job here is to do our best job to get behind the defensive player, and to do that, we want to have our inside shoulder pointed forward. This will give us leverage to try to turn the corner. Finally, we have our head position, and most importantly, our eyes. If we are in this position in a game, we should expect to receive a slide. So we have to have our eyes up and ready to detect a defenseman sliding to us and be able to read the field and find any passing opportunities. You can do this by standing in the middle of the drill and making offensive players call out the number of fingers you have up. Next, we're going to move into our dodges. Offensively, there are a ton of dodges that we can do from this position, and they are all in an attempt to do one of two things. The first is to turn the corner and get behind the defenseman and in a better position to score. The second is to free our hands for a good shot or pass. A few of the dodges that will help us turn the corner are rockers, Z dodges, roll dodges, and inside rolls. The big key to any of these dodges is that once we gain an advantage to either side of the defenseman, we do our best to turn the corner and get behind them. A few dodges that we can use to free our hands are jab steps, stepaways, and question marks. Finally, we have shot techniques and rules that are defined by what happens on the dodge. After the dodge, players will be either closer to the goal than their defenseman or outside of their defenseman. If players are closer to the goal than their defenseman, the rules are the following. First, don't hang your stick and give the defenseman an opportunity to throw trail checks. Players can generate enough power to score inside by keeping their stick in front of their shoulders and snapping their wrists. Second is to get their stick to the middle of the field. This will give us more goal to shoot at. Third is to be deceptive by using fakes, shooting from high to low, and then wrapping the ball around the goalie. Goalies are trained to match stick inside, so using fakes will make them bite before finishing in a different location. Shooting high to low or wrapping the ball around the goalie inside is extremely hard to save unless the goalie gets their feet or a shin on the ball. If the players are farther from the goal than their defenseman, the rules are 1. Get your stick as close to the middle of the field as possible, and 2. Be deceptive with your shots. If players are going to use a question mark and shoot with their outside hands, they need to get upfield and push to the middle first. Players should never shoot sidearm when doing a question mark because it eliminates more of an already slim shooting angle. Now let's check out some reps from a video that we shot last summer, and at this clinic we didn't have a goalie, so we just ended up using a shoe mash goal, but it doesn't change what we're actually doing within the reps of the one-on-one. In the first two videos, we are working on turning the corner from a midfield alley dodge. The offensive player does an alright job of trying to push towards the middle of the field and turn the corner, but we'd like for him to try using a rocker or rollback and finish the drill by moving across the face of the goal. The defensive player does a great job of forcing him to a bad angle for his shot. In our second clip, the defenseman doesn't do a great job of pushing the offensive player and gets beat. After the offensive player gets a step right here, we would like for him to turn the corner and finish in front of the goal rather than fading away to X. A great teaching point here is that once your offensive player has his shoulders past the defensive player's shoulders, he should push to the middle of the field. In our third clip, the offensive player does a jab step to question mark to get separation and gets off a pretty good shot, but he could have been more efficient by jabbing harder to the middle and then starting his jump shot here on his first step rather than taking 2 more steps. The defensive player does a good job of getting an initial punch, but doesn't stay on the drive to the sideline and ends up making a desperation lift check at the end. In our fourth clip, the offensive player uses a great rocker to get topside and does a decent job turning the corner and shooting around a screen. The only big thing I would say to this player is that he shouldn't use his stick in his rocker. Watch how his stick ends up vulnerable as he rocks backward. Instead of throwing his stick out to the side, he should keep his stick between his shoulders and rock his shoulders and head. As for the defenseman in this example, the first thing we see is that he is not low at the start of the drill. Watch how his hips drop when the drill starts. If he had been in this low position to begin with, he would have been faster and better able to push the offensive player off of his line. Next, we would tell him to maintain his position on the rocker move and push. If the offensive player actually goes underneath and we can push him down, that's a good thing, so we don't need to bite so hard on low moves. Once players are familiar with the dodges and techniques that they're going to use within this island 1v1 drill, then we can build and move into short one-on-ones and then our full scale one-on-ones to build the entire spectrum of skills that we're going to want to see out of our players throughout an entire one-on-one concept. I hope that you enjoyed this video of island one-on-ones and that you feel that you can use it within your program. If you can, make sure to share this video. If you want to learn more, head to POWLAXmastercoach.com for more drills and lacrosse coaching content. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for me, you can email me at patrick@powlax.com. Have a good one. I will see you in the next video.